Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Horror Realm. I'm Travis Bruce, and today we're doing another Women of Horror Spotlight. Today, up with us, she's an author, and she has a YA horror series out right now that's called This Is NOIR. I have with us Audra Kate Gonzalez. Audra Kate, welcome to the Horror Realm.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure having you on. By the way, I love that Batman behind you.
Oh, yes, thank you.
So tell us a little bit about this YA series, This Is NOIR.
Yeah, so This Is NOIR is basically about a city that exists in every state, NOIR, and in each NOIR, weird stuff happens there. So it was heavily inspired by the books that I read as a child, like Goosebumps and Fear Street and Point Horror books. But like the TV show Erie, Indiana, if you've ever watched that show. Yes. So yeah, it was very much so inspired by those things, but I try to dive a little bit more into the horror realm than what I think like Goosebumps and Fear Street and Point Horror really did. Just because as a teen I liked to get really creeped out, so
Me too. I did as well. Now, did you attend this when you first started writing the first story? Did you intend this to be a series?
When I first started writing it was actually a short story that I wrote for a college course. And my professor was like, oh, hey, you should, the first book was, Tomato Juice is the first book. And he was like, you should turn this into something more full length. And that was kind of when the gears started turning, and I was like, okay. And so the first book then came about that way, in the series. And from there, I just decided that I wanted to make NOIR exist in every state, which is a hard task. You know, that's 50 books. So we'll see if that happens, but that would be the end goal. I would love to do that. But right now we're in 2 states, and I'm working on book 3 right now.
And what state will book 3 be in?
Book 3 will be in Ohio, which is where I am from.
OH.
Yes, IO.
So I mean, so when it comes to writing a YA series, do you get a lot of inspiration from youth when it comes to your books?
I do. So I actually used to work at a school, and what I learned from kids is as much as kids will get freaked out and get scared, they love to get scared. Yes. And I found that I found that so encouraging to me as a kid who grew up loving horror and watching horror movies, probably way too young to be watching some of the horror movies that I watched with my dad. But I was very much so inspired by the kids that I worked with, and just like, I mean, we're talking elementary school kids, middle school kids who would get so excited when I would bring, you know, the next Goosebumps book into the school, or the next, you know, Goosebumps. Sometimes we would have like Goosebumps watch parties, and we would just like watch an episode of Goosebumps, and just seeing them get so excited, and they wanted the scare level up almost every single time. Like they're like, oh, is this one scary? And it was very inspiring to me, and just encouraging that like we haven't lost that generation of like kids who love to get creeped out and don't care if it's like weird. Yes. So I definitely drew from that, and still draw from it as I'm writing, like trying to just bring that creep factor, and not like lessening it because they're kids who are reading the books, you know, because I think sometimes authors do that, you know, they go into it with the mindset of, well, they're kids. And it's like, well, there's a lot of stuff that like we don't really consider with kids. Kids are very intuitive. Kids are very, you know, they're very smart. They and they enjoy a lot of things that we're just like, oh, kids wouldn't like that, and they do. And so I kind of just pulled from that.
Now, so I was born in the '80s, and so I loved reading Goosebumps and R.L. Stein stuff when I was growing up. But what has happened with like the newer generation? Like parents are like, I don't know, they're like, oh my goodness, we can't show it, because at 5 years old I was shown horror movies and action movies and people's heads getting blown off. So, well, it seems like my generation, even generation after us, when it comes to parents, it's like they want to desensitize their kids, or I should sensitize their kids. Where, oh no, I can't show them this, I can't this and that, because they're not ready for it.
Yeah, that it is mind-boggling to me. I don't know if it's just because we're part of that generation now where, and I feel weird saying this, but like people are like more considerate about, sensitivities and things like that, which is good, but also like, I mean, it's stuff that I grew up watching, and like I said, probably way too young, but also it's what shaped me into like who I am today. Like I wouldn't have grown up to want to be a horror author if I hadn't been introduced to R.L. Stein, if I hadn't been introduced to movies like, Stephen King's Carrie was really the first staple horror movie of my entire life that, it freaked me out, but also it was like you couldn't pull your eyes away from the TV. And so it is mind-boggling to me, because I'm like, I wouldn't be who I am today probably if I didn't have those influences in my life back then. So I think it's one of those things where it's like, if your kid can handle it, like, and they want to, like, why not be like, okay, we can try it out and see what happens, you know? But it is funny to me. And then you have those other parents who are like, oh, I don't care. I'm going to go take them to go see the next horror movie next week, And I've gone to movies where, like, when it came out, it chapter 1 and chapter 2, like, I remember sitting in the theater and there's, like, little 8-year-olds in the theater, and I was like, holy crap, these kids are going to lose their minds. And, but I think there's two different spectrums. It just depends.
I agree. Because I mean, one thing about horror with me, right? Horror taught me at a young age, and it still does at 42 years old. There's certain things you don't do. Like, listen, there's bad people in this world. There's certain places you just don't go. You don't trespass. You don't do drugs. You just don't be a bad person, because if you're a bad person, something bad's going to happen. And I just feel like, to sugarcoat to the next generations that, everything is this wonderful, peachy, innocent world. I mean, I think it is doing your child injustice.
I totally agree. I'm actually listening to this audiobook right now. It's like the science fiction of women in horror or something like that. And they do discuss in that book just like how much horror can open your eyes to, like, one, basically the sins of man, like of humans overall. It opens your eyes to that and allows you to, to see every horror icon is an example of just like the evil behind humanity. And I do think we need to see that displayed in film. And I don't understand people who trash horror. You see it in ratings, you see it in the underappreciation of horror in being awarded, because you're never going to see a horror film win anything at
Yeah,
the Academy.
exactly.
But I definitely, I do think it opens our eyes to what the world is really like. Yeah, it's a fictional setting, and you're not gonna see some of these characters in real life, but there still are, like, Freddy Krueger. Yeah, you're not gonna see him in real life, but like there's still versions of him in real life. There are monsters that exist that are very much so like Freddy Krueger, but Freddy Krueger is just like a fictional creation of these, things that we face in humanity.
And like one of the movies which I'm a fan of, because I've traveled the world, I've been to many different countries, but the Hostel movies, if you're an American and you want to, well, I just want to go to Italy or France and I'm gonna be 1% safe, but you got to realize the rest of the world does not like Americans. They don't, and there's good reasons that they don't like us. So like, you just have to be cautious when you go to foreign countries. You really do, especially as an American, because the rest of the world doesn't like us and they see us as dollar signs. And that's something that, as a young person, you need to see that, because, you're going to start traveling. You're going to start, oh my God, this hot guy in Italy wants to take me back to his room, and not knowing, boom, you're in sex slavery or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you just have to know these things. The world is not a pretty place.
You bring that up and it makes me think of like Midsummer. Midsummer is all about, learning another culture. They go there in this setting and it's just like, la-di-da, we're going to take this nice little like vacation. And it's like, they had to learn about a whole entire culture and just like what these people do. And like, to them, it was horror. But to this culture, like, it's completely normal. And so I do think that's like another thing that is interesting too when you look at horror. It's like you can learn about these different things and different cultures and people who do exist in the world. And yeah, it is eye-opening and interesting, and I think you can learn a lot from it.
I agree. And one thing too, I'm gonna do a PSA real quick. If you go to someone's house and you see dead bodies or something like that, you do not go, oh my God, I'm going to call the cops and tell them. No, this is what you do. You go, wow, that's cool. I love your collection of dead bodies. And you act completely fucking normal. And then you kind of ease your way out. You never, ever, ever, ever say, oh my God, I'm freaked out. I'm calling the cops. That is the worst thing. You're definitely going to act completely natural and act like you're interested in this person's collection of dead bodies.
I completely agree. If you grew up watching horror, you will know that.
Yes. Exactly. If you didn't, you're gonna be that person screaming out and get murdered. Yes. I remember in Pearl, I was watching Pearl in the theaters, and I was watching the guy. No, it was the sister-in-law, and she was like, "Oh my God, Pearl is murdering people and this and that." And instead of just being like, "Wow, okay, that's cool, girl," like, she goes crazy and starts running. I'm like, why would you run from someone who's clearly a murderer, whose intentions are not to hurt you? They're trying to share with you who they are. Like, just go along with the flow.
Yeah, we were just watching this movie last night called the Legacy Murders, and it was basically like they had to play this like murder mystery game, and if they didn't play the game, they were gonna be murdered. And literally the whole entire time, like half of the movie, there's like 3 people who are actually like, we're gonna play the game, and then there's like these other people who are like, no, we're gonna do anything but play the game, and we're gonna try to escape. And it's like the whole time the person is like over the loudspeaker being like, if you just play the game, like, this is your final warning, just play the game. And I'm sitting there going, just play the game.
Yes.
Like, just play the game. Like, what's going to happen?
or just pretend like you're playing the game and then escape, but don't announce that you're not playing the
Right.
game and try to escape. Like, that's
I'm
stupid.
like,
Just go along with the flow.
right. Like, why are we not playing the game? They just give you like a final warning. Just play the game. See what happens.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's going to be better. Like, we saw someone's foot get blown off, and they were still like, no, we're not playing the game. And I'm like, seriously? The dude lost his foot. What?
I'm playing the damn game.
Right.
Now, as a indie horror author, is it hard to stand out and get your work out there?
Sometimes it's a lot of legwork, and I won't sugarcoat it and say that it's easy. And even if you're an indie author and you have like thousands of followers, and you have tons of reviews or whatever, even those indie authors, like I'm sure you've seen in some of the Facebook groups, like even those indie authors, they're putting in a lot of legwork to get their books out there and to get their books into people's hands, and to get their books in stores and things like that. And so it is difficult. Some months you'll see your sales and you'll be like, dang, I didn't know I was doing that good. And then some months you're like, wow, I sold one book. And even that one book though, like sometimes it sucks when you see like you only sold like 1 or 2 books a month. But even those moments, they're still rewarding moments and you still feel good about them. So, but yeah, it is a lot of legwork.
Now, do you pay attention to reviews online?
I do. I always check my reviews and just see what's like going on, because I like to learn from them. I'm very much so like I also love being a supportive reader. So anytime that I read someone's book or whatever, I'm always trying to leave a review, whether it's on Goodreads, Amazon, or my own Instagram. And so I definitely do check reviews, though. I like to see what people are saying, and I think they're a great place to learn. So whether it's a good review or a bad review, like, I love to see it.
Is it painful I'm assuming you don't have that many bad reviews, but is it painful when you see that bad reviews like, oh, this book sucks, or something like that?
Sometimes they can, sometimes it's painful. It just depends. Most of the time, they make me laugh. Because they are really funny. So I did get one review once for tomato juice, and it wasn't on Goodreads or Amazon. It was actually an Instagram review, and they tagged me in it, which I'm gonna PSA here. If you give an author a bad review, like if it's not on Goodreads or Amazon and it's on your own personal account, just don't tag the author. Like, that's etiquette. Yeah. Just don't tag us. If it's a bad review. But yeah, it was a bad review and it made me laugh. It was for tomato juice. So in tomato juice, the grandma in the story, like the whole point of the story is the grandma is possessed and her grandson is the one who, has to perform the exorcism, and he's dealing with all of this by himself, and the reviewer didn't like it because they felt that I was like, basically, like it was like senior citizen abuse. And I was just like, she's possessed. Like, what's supposed to happen? Like, at one point in the story, like the main character, the kid, like obviously he's fighting for his life. So of course he's gonna probably end up decking grandma at some point. And right, exactly. Like, the kid's trying to not only save his life, he's trying to save his grandma's life. But there comes a point where, in the fight, things are going to happen. And I just thought it was so funny because I'm like, did you miss the part where she was possessed? I don't know. It was funny to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was even more funny because like my grandpa read the book. And my grandpa, obviously, he loved the book. He loved the book. And then I told him about the review, and he thought that was hysterical. But yeah, so it's just funny to me. Like most of the time, the reviews that come in that are bad reviews. I've had people review my books and give me a bad review, not because the book itself was bad, but because they don't like horror. And I was really confused because I'm like, if you don't like horror, I don't know why you read it, and I don't think that's grounds for like giving it a bad review, but what do I know?
I totally understand what you mean. Like, if I was going to listen, if I had a problem with, I don't know, people talking, let's say, let's say if I'm a super Christian, right? And I see a horror book that's talking bad about Christianity, I'm just not going to read the book. Like, I'm just not going to read the book. So I don't understand why people, it's something that they're finding offensive or whatever, but they're going to read a book or even watch a YouTube video just to complain about it. And I'm like, well, if it's something, because I mean, I've read books where I'm like, this is an amazing book, and I put my review up, and I like to look at other people's reviews, and I'm looking at this person, like, almost what you said, like, I'm like, why did you read this book? Like, clearly you were never going to like this book anyway. So what was the point of even buying this book and even watching? I mean, even reading it?
Mm-hmm. No, I agree, and that's why anymore, because I read a lot of genres, and I get asked to read. Like I'll have people reach out to me to read they'll give me an art copy or whatever to read it and then review it. And what I find is like, even if it's a genre that like I don't love, I really just try to focus on like, are the characters there? Is the character development there? Is the plot there? Is the dialogue good? Like, I'm mainly looking at the components of the writing and the storytelling as a whole, to base my review off of. So a lot of times, like, really for people who are reviewing books, like, it shouldn't come down to like, is this the type of book I would normally read, or isn't it the type of book? It should come down to like, is this writing good writing, or is it not good writing?
Simple as that. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. But I'm not into romantic books, so I would not read a romantic book and then bash it. And then bash it. I mean, does this make any sense?
Exactly. I totally agree. And honestly, those have honestly been just the bad reviews that I've gotten have mainly just been, I don't like this genre, and I don't like the fact that grandma got beat up a little bit. And I'm like, okay.
But at the end of the day, it's hard. Horror has to be a little offensive. It has to be. I mean,
yeah, I agree.
That's what makes horror.
There's a lot of tough subjects in horror. Horror has a huge like coming of age trope. Most of Stephen King's books are coming of age trope, and so a lot of times when you have a book that relies heavily on the coming of age trope, like you'll find that there are hard subjects dealt with because these teenagers, especially in my book, since they are young adult books, these teenagers are being put in difficult situations that we as adults wouldn't even know how to handle these situations sometimes. And so you put a teen in that type of situation, a lot of these teens are having, to grow up a lot quicker than what you normally would. And they're having to face fears that normally, they wouldn't have to face. And so because of that, there are difficult things that are talked about, and difficult subjects that come up in these stories. And that's just the nature of horror.
I totally agree. Now, all right. Now, I'm pretty sure you've seen my show. Every once in a while, I'll do this. I'm going to ask you 3 random horror questions. This is just your personal opinion.
Okay.
All right. The first one is, what is one horror trope that drives you nuts?
Ooh. I really hate the I really hate that the pretty girl. It's always the pretty girl who is typically just like killed off. She has to go. Her main goal of the book or the movie, whichever one, is she's just there to attract the gaze, and she's not given anything more than that. She ends up being a stagnant character because of that, because she's just there to be pretty, and she's only in there long enough until they need to kill her off. And she's usually killed off in some horrific way, and it's usually after the fact that she's had, like, sex or something. And that drives me crazy, because I'm like, just for once, let's let the attractive girl who maybe she was the meanest at the beginning, or maybe she's attractive and she's not the brightest or whatever. Let's give her a chance. Let's give her an opportunity to make it through the storyline.
I listen. I agree with you on that. And by the way, and this is coming from a man's opinion, right? they always make the pretty girl into like a slut or like a promiscuous character, right? And this is my personal experience as a man, right? My opinion. So please don't bash me. Pretty girls and pretty women are usually not the promiscuous ones.
I agree. I think that
They're usually very selective. They're usually very selective on who they have sex with, And I don't know how to say it. That sounds awful, but it's true. So like, I don't know why the pretty girl in the movies are always the promiscuous sluts, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm. And that's always why they have to die. Again, it goes back to okay, a lot of times in horror movies we're seeing the 7 deadly sins played out a lot of times. And so, one of those things is lust. So you have the lustful character thrown in there, and usually the lustful character is the one who goes. The lustful character is never the final girl. And I personally think it's a little kind of like disappointing, because I'm like, she's always the one who's left screaming and running for her life, and it's like, let's give her a chance and like see what can happen, like, give her more of a character arc other than just being the pretty girl or the popular girl. That's something that in my book Alligator Skin, there's a character and her name's Moira, and I wanted Moira to be she is pretty, she is popular, she is, this strong African American character, and I wanted it to be known that just because she's pretty and she's popular doesn't mean she's going to get killed off in the story, and it doesn't mean she's going to get labeled the mean girl. And that's what I turned her into, because I'm like, I didn't want people to be like, I introduce this character to them who at first is going to seem like she's going to be the typical stereotypical mean girl character, and she ends up being the complete opposite of that, because I'm so over that trope.
But I know the reason. I'm going to give you the answer to this, and it's going to probably piss off a lot of my indie horror filmmakers. But the answer is because a lot of most men who make horror films, right, were not successful with women growing up. You know what I mean? Especially the attractive ones. So I think that's why the hate is put on attractive women in horror movies. That's me. That's my personal hypothesis.
I can see that. That book that I told you I'm listening to on the science fiction of like women in horror, they do a whole chapter on the virgin trope and like the slut trope, and basically just like comparing the two. And it's really interesting how they, bring up that it's always like the pure character who is the final girl. And Scream was like one of movies that tried to break that barrier by then making like part of the movie, you know, part of the ending is when Sydney, you know, she loses her virginity at the end. And so then it was like they were trying to break that stereotype of the final girl is a virgin. But, you know, she was still seen as that like virtuous character though, even after that.
I agree. Now the second question is, who is your favorite final girl?
Okay. It's a tie. I really love Sydney Prescott. I do love Sydney. But I also love, and I feel bad because I can't think of her name right now. Samara Weaving's character in Ready or Not.
Yes.
I loved her character, and I think she got the ending that she so rightfully deserved.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm excited that they announced a second movie with her.
I saw that.
Yes.
And I'm shocked that movie. I saw that in the theater. See, I'm shocked that movie did not get the amount of attention that it should. It was a great movie.
It was a great movie. I highly recommend it. If nobody has watched that, highly recommend Ready or Not.
Yes, I'm pretty sure it's on one of the streaming services. So definitely check it out. And it's a bloody good time too. It's a bloody, gory movie.
It is. It's very unexpected.
Mm-hmm. And the final question is, what is one horror movie that everybody says that they love, but you don't like?
I feel like there's a lot. Let's see here. What is one? You know, I don't love The Shining. You're
the second person to say that recently.
Okay, yeah, that one gets a lot of like hype and a lot of love, and I can understand it from a cinematic point of view. The cinematography in that movie is really good, and it is commendable. But yeah, I don't love it. It's to me, it was just kind of like meh, you know. And I had to watch it like a couple of times before I really understood what was happening. You know, watching that movie the first time through, like it was just like, this is a fever dream. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, watching it a couple times through and then like understanding what's happening, I don't know. It just wasn't my.
It's a good horror movie, but I hear anybody say that it's their favorite horror movie. I'm like, that's interesting, because I would even put it in my top 20 favorite horror movies.
No, I wouldn't either. I don't, and it's funny too because like I don't think I could tell anyone what it really did for the horror genre in terms of like being a staple. Like I don't know. Yeah. I'm sure someone could tell me that. Could tell me like what it did for the horror genre, but to me, I don't get why it's so renowned.
Yes. And I would say mine like I normally do, but I'm not going to say it because I've heard that the third one is amazing. So I'm not going to say Terrifier anymore. Okay. So Terrifier, you're not going to hear me say nothing bad about you guys anymore. Okay. Because I hated the first movie. All right. All right. And that's why I think that they won't come on my show because I've been bad mouthing the first movie. But I say I love the second movie. It's just the first movie. I just don't understand the hype yet. All right. So, Audra Tate, where can everyone find you and your book?
Okay. So my books are on Amazon. They're also like on Barnes & Noble, pretty much anywhere online where you purchase your books. That's where they're at. I'm also in, certain bookstores across Ohio, certain independent bookstores across Ohio. So if you live in Ohio, or if you're stopping through and there's an indie bookstore near you, my books are probably there. And then, you can find me. I'm mostly on Instagram, at lets.get.lit.urature. And then the handle's the same as my TikTok, but I'm rarely on TikTok. And my author website is author.audreykategonzalez.com.
Audrey, listen, it's been a pleasure having you on. Listen,
Thank
everybody, you're welcome. Everybody, get over there and grab your copy and follow. This is NOIR.
Yes, definitely.
And follow Audra too on social media. Everyone, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce. Please, no nasty comments. Listen, I'm not saying that unattractive women are hoes or anything. I did not say that. I'm just saying, why do we got to label attractive women as sluts? I don't know why. I mean, it's an untrue statement. It's an untrue statement. All right. Thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and that's Audrey Kate Gonzalez. We'll see you next time. Take care.